Hey guys, LazyMan here. Today we're going to be taking a look at an AMD build that I'm doing. Now this is based around the 6-core Phenom II CPU. Anyway, this is actually a really solid build that we're putting together. So for all your AMD supporters, this ought to be something you'll enjoy. So anyway, let's take a closer look at the hardware. Okay, the first thing we have is the CPU. And this is the 6-core AMD Phenom II Black Edition. It's the 1090T running at 3.2 gigahertz with a 3.6 gigahertz turbo core. So anyway, I haven't used this CPU before, so I'm really curious to see how well that performs. We're also going to be using the Arctic MX3 thermal compound. And for me, at the moment, this is probably one of my favorite thermal compounds. So that ought to help keep the CPU nice and cool. We are going to be matching that up with the Crosshair IV Formula Motherboard by Asus. And then the client decided to go with the 2GB Sapphire Toxic 5850 GPU. And then we're also going to be installing 4GB of Dominator RAM. And the client was debating between 4GB or 8GB. We decided at the moment just to go with 4, and then as soon as I send the system to him, if he feels he needs to add 4 more gigabytes, he'll increase that to 8. For cooling, we're going to be using the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Plus. Again, right now, one of the better air coolers on the market. This is the one that has the heat pipes that actually make contact with the CPU. So that ought to really help keep things cool. And we're going to be running that in a push-pull configuration. And we chose to go with 2 Noctua 120mm fans. These are the NF-P12 fans. Now these actually run super quiet. I don't have the dB handy right now, but trust me, they are quiet. So with these, with the Hyper 212 as the cooler, using MX3 as the thermal compound, I think we're going to have a pretty nice, cool system. Also, we're going to be replacing the fans inside the case and actually adding a couple more. And these are the Scythe 1900 RPM F-Flex 120mm fans. Now these I do know run at 34 dB, which is, it's a little loud. But I think with the case that the client chose, I don't think we'll even be able to hear these. And also we're going to be hooking them up to a fan controller, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. Alright, for the OS, we are going to be installing a 300GB VelociRaptor. That's the 10,000 RPM. And then for storage and backup, the client has decided to go with the 1TB Western Digital Black Edition. Again, this is one of the better performing hard drives out there. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, for a standard hard drive, unless you get into SSDs, if you want a nice performing 1TB hard drive, I prefer the 2TB, but I'll tell you, the Caviar Blacks, probably the best on the market, within their their range. Also, the client has decided to go with a Soundcard. This is the HT Omega Claro Plus. Again, this is an excellent choice. I've heard great reviews about this Soundcard. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this thing performs and compared to my Creative. I think this, I've read a lot of good reviews. Curious to see how it really works. And then for the optical drive, the client has decided to go with a LG Blu-ray player. And then he's going to match that up with a standard Samsung DVD writer. And then for the fan controller, we are using the Nex Sentry. And we understand that this fan controller has had some issues with the battery. Apparently after about a month or two it burns out. So before I even install it, we are going to change out the battery on that. And then for the case, we are going to go with the Antec P182 case. And we'll actually look at that a little more in depth in a moment here. And then the only mods that we're doing to this case is the client has asked me to install a pair of Leon Lee wheels to it. So again, the only mod we're doing, pretty straightforward build. Now to power all this, we are using the Corsair 620 watt modular power supply. And there was some question whether the 620 watt had enough juice, to power this system. And so I've actually ran some tests, and I can confirm that 620 watts so far has been doing a great job. So anyway, as you can see, as I said, I've been running some bench tests. These boxes are empty. In fact, all the boxes are empty. And let's take a look at this bench test for a moment. There were two reasons why I had to run bench tests here. The first one was to see if the 620 watt power supply had enough juice to power the system, especially when overclocking. I have overclocked it to just above 4.0. So far I haven't had any issues. Now again, I'm not running this on a daily basis, but I think we're going to be fine. The other reason, and this was the main reason, was with this Crosshair IV Formula motherboard, there has been some issues with the North Bridge. A lot of people have been complaining that their temperatures have been kind of running pretty high, and there's been issues with the heatsink on the North Bridge not making contact. So I did run some bench tests. We were slightly high, not as high as that I thought we were going to be, of course not as low as we wanted to be. So we decided to go ahead and pull the heatsink off and then take a look at it. And I do have some pictures I'm going to show you, gentlemen. Take a look at them and I'll show you what I did, because what happens is the standoffs on the North Bridge were actually a little bit longer than the standoffs on the South Bridge. And as you'll see in the pictures, the South Bridge was making great contact, and the North Bridge was making, very little contact. So when we took it off, I made some modifications to the standoffs. Reapplied some MX3 compound, reset the heat sinks, and ran some more bench tests. And we're about 5 to 6 degrees lower on the North Bridge. So I think it paid off for us doing that. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those pictures, and then we'll take a look at the case. Alright, here's just a picture of the motherboard before I removed the heatsink. And then this is the South Bridge. You can see it made pretty good contact. And the North Bridge didn't do quite as well. And this is after removing the heatsink, and you can see the difference between the South Bridge and the North Bridge. It's a pretty big difference there. Again, a close-up of the South Bridge. And then the North Bridge, even though it made contact, it probably wasn't as good as it could have been. Now these are the standoffs. The one in the middle is the South Bridge standoff. The two outer ones are from the North Bridge. And what I did is I went ahead and filed them down so they would all be the same length. And then as you can see there, that's the only way I figured I could fix it. And here are the temperatures. You can see the North Bridge is at 38 degrees Celsius. This is running at 4.0. Our original temperature was 44 degrees Celsius. So not a huge difference, but about 6 degrees. So it did make some difference. And so if anybody's interested or has been looking at this motherboard, again, the Crosshair IV Formula, be concerned or be under the impression that you may have to pull off the heat sinks, modify the standoffs, and then reset that. Now, we could have left it the way it was, but we chose to do it anyway. And you can, I'm telling you that we've improved by 6 degrees. So anyway, let's get back onto the case. Alright guys, again, this is the Antec P182 case. And as you can see, it's not a very flashy case. But if you're looking for something that is streamlined, built around performance, has great airflow, and is a very quiet case, this is one. So anyway, let's take a closer look at it. Okay guys, taking a look at the front here, as you can see, you have easy access to your FireWire, USB ports, headphones and microphone jacks, and it also comes with the lock. Then if we open up the door here, gives you access to your 5 1/4 bays, which you have 4 of them. And then you have some ventilation areas. One at the bottom, there's a hard drive cage behind here, an additional hard drive cage behind here. Now what this does is actually intakes fan, not only to cool the hard drives, but keep the case cool. But with the door shut, you're wondering, like, LazyMan, how's it going to get any air? Well, anyway, Antec has devised a pretty good system here, and right behind the door they have slots that actually allow air to actually be intake from those two fans, and they're actually on both sides here, as you can see. So that was pretty clever to use that kind of design with a solid door. And the reason why this case is as quiet as it is the door here is a 3-layer construction. And what it is, it's aluminum on the inside, polycarbonate in the middle, and the aluminum on the outside. So that actually acts as a sound barrier. Again, the side panels, the same thing. We do have a 3-layer construction technology. Again, aluminum, polycarbonate, and then a aluminum plate on the outside. And that is, again, the same thing on the other side. So anyway, there's not much else to show on the outside other than maybe the top. The top, you do have another 120 millimeter exhaust fan. It is covered by a shroud. I don't see the functional purpose of the shroud, but it does add a little bit of style to the top, as you can see. And then for the back of the case, pretty standard. You do have your I/O shield goes here. You have another 120 millimeter exhaust fan. You have 7 slots. They did put a couple holes in that are grommeted if you decide to go water cooling. And then this case does have the PSU mounted on the bottom. So anyway, let's take off the side panel and we'll have a look inside. Alright guys, one thing I forgot to mention, it does come with a couple low, medium, high switches here in the back. And these control the top exhaust fan and the rear exhaust fan. Of course, we won't be using those. We'll be hooking everything up to a fan controller, but for those who aren't going to use a fan controller, that's a nice addition. So now if we take a look at the inside here, and let me back up a little bit. So as you can see here, the case has been designed with different chambers. We have the lower section where the PSU will go, and then in front of that, hard drive cage. Then above that, another hard drive cage, and then your 5 1/4 bay housing, and then the area for your motherboard and whatnot. So other than it having that one chamber there for the PSU, it is pretty standard. So let's get a closer look at it. So anyway, one of the drawbacks that I've noticed with this case is where the PSU goes, there is no ventilation here or perforated steel here on the bottom, as you can see. So I believe they installed this fan here, which will actually, I'm not sure how it works. I'm going to have to look in the manual on that. Because I was thinking it would be pulling air from up here, past the hard drives, through here, over the PSU, and then out these ventilation holes here in the back. But maybe that's just there to help keep the, we know all the cool air is staying on the bottom. That'll help keep the PSU cool. But they should have included some ventilation holes. So anyway, again, the hard drive cage down here on the bottom, you undo the thumb screw, you pull out the ring, and you can pull out the hard drive cage. And again, it's a toolless operation to put the hard drives in, pretty much standard with the Antec cases. Then it has a second hard drive bay, same thing. You move the thumb screw here, pull it out. But we're going to end up pulling this one out and leaving it out, just so we have access for our GPU. As you can see, I had measured this, and the card just barely fits. But once we run our wiring and whatnot, this will get in our way. So, he's only running 2 hard drives, so it's not a big deal to remove that. Then at the top here, we have our 5 1/4 bay. Again, it only has 4 bays up there. Not a problem with this build. We're going to have the 2 optical drives, and then we'll have the fan controller, which takes up 2 drives. And then where the motherboard goes, and I believe this takes micro ATX and ATX only. So once everything's installed, there won't be much room in this case. But again, if you're looking for a case that is going to have good airflow, because I believe this one will have very good airflow, and it was also built to be quiet, I think this would be a good choice. And again, if you're not looking for something flashy, I mean, there's no side window. It has the gunmetal brushed aluminum exterior. So again, not a bad case. So anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I will be doing this build probably in the next day or two. Again, it's going to be a quick, easy build, and then we'll get back on the Corsair. So anyway, I'll give you guys a final video when this one's done. Alright, talk to you guys later.